What if I told you the products that you use on your body every day might not be as safe for you as you think? My guest, pharmacist Amy Enos, breaks down the hidden toxins in personal care products and shows how simple swaps can leave you feeling empowered and in control of your health. So come join us. Women's Wellness Authority is your go-to podcast for discovering the hidden gems of holistic health and well-being. In each episode, we dive deep into the many layers of wellness, from mental and physical health to spiritual growth. Through insightful interviews with experts, healers, and thought leaders, we uncover alternative approaches, healing practices, and fresh perspectives that empower you to transform your life. Whether you're seeking innovative ways to heal your body, your mind, or nourish your soul, this podcast offers practical tools and wisdom to help you thrive in all areas of your life. Let's rewrite the rules of wellness together. Step into your power, reclaim your health, and discover what it means to truly thrive from the inside out. Welcome back to Women's Wellness Authority. I'm your host, Diana Ruszkowski, and today's conversation is for every woman who's ever stood in the personal care aisle feeling completely overwhelmed. Whether you're buying shampoo, deodorant, lotion, makeup, so many of those products we use every single day are marketed as clean, as natural, or safe. But here's the truth. The personal care industry is one of the least regulated in the United States out there, and those labels don't always mean what you think they mean. My guest, Amy Enos, knows this better than most. Amy is a pharmacist on a mission to bring awareness to harmful ingredients hiding in personal care, beauty, and cleaning products. And after losing her mother to cancer, she dove deep into understanding what we are exposed to every day. And now she's passionate about empowering consumers to see through false, clean claims and the greenwashing that's everywhere in the market. It's literally everywhere. Amy does not believe in shame or perfection. She believes in simple, approachable steps that take the stress out of the process and give you the peace of mind. In this episode, she'll share the top ingredients to avoid, what fragrance really means, how to spot greenwashing, and how to start making changes without feeling like you have to overhaul your entire routine overnight. So by the end, you'll see that cleaning up your personal care products isn't overwhelming. It's empowering, like most of our conversations. And most importantly, it's one of the best ways that you can take back control of your health and your family's well-being. So thank you for joining us today, Amy.
Thank you so much, Diana. I'm so excited to have this conversation. It's such an important conversation. So I'm so jazzed to be here.
So Amy, you and I both share a very deep passion for living a low-tox lifestyle. And it's really not because it's trendy, but it's because you and I both know how much it actually impacts our health and our family's well-being. So can you share what first sparked your commitment to this lifestyle and why it's become such an important mission for you?
Absolutely. And I like to share this aspect of it because it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I'm a pharmacist or an ingredient expert. And what really sparked the commitment to this lifestyle is being a family member of someone who got a terminal cancer diagnosis. And every time you turn around, we have our loved ones being diagnosed with cancer, right? So I lost my mom to stage 4 kidney cancer back in 2020. And it was in 2016 that she got that terminal diagnosis. And as a pharmacist, I knew what her diagnosis meant. And like anybody in that situation, you just are, why? Why did this happen? You know, peeling the onion on where did this come from? I mean, I hadn't even heard anybody in our family remotely have any kidney issues or kidney cancer. And so I just started digging into all the things in wellness, you know, the food we eat, the air we breathe. And the path that really got me most shocked was the products we're using every single day. And so I, as a daughter, really just a daughter of someone who got a cancer diagnosis, went down this rabbit hole. And I'm still deep, deep, deep down in that hole. I've never come out. And I found this incredible passion, so much knowledge and things that I was not even aware of, especially as a healthcare professional. That's what was so shocking to me in my own journey. And now that my mom has passed and succumbed to that diagnosis, this mission is so important to me because one, everybody needs to know this. This is tremendously important information. But I personally get to honor my mom through this work. So the conversations I have every day, the information that I share, to me is a real tribute to her. And I get to think of her through this work.
That's such a beautiful way to honor her and her life too. Can be so impactful. I remember when I started my journey, which was probably about 7 years ago, and my eyes were opened wide to the products that I thought were safe. And it was interesting because there was a study or stats that were shared with me from American Cancer Society. And then I dug into this a little bit before our conversation. And there was an article too in 2008 in a journal called Pharmacogenetics, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And they basically stated that 5 to 10% of all cancer cases are thought to come from genetics. 5 to 10%, where the remaining 90 to 95% can be linked to environmental and lifestyle factors. So that's what we're talking about today. And I heard that stat, and normally maybe some people are really alarmed by that. But for me, I have family members on both sides of my family. My husband is like parents both had cancer, one passed from it. I had just thought, wow, our odds are stacked against us. My kids are going to inherit, my husband's going to. And seeing that stat to me was really empowering because it felt like I had control of a majority of what actually does cause cancer. And then the more I dug, the more I realized the personal products are a big part of that. So that's my perspective, but I would love your thoughts on why that's so important for women and families right now.
Absolutely. It's so neat to hear that perspective that you just shared because that's what I want people to think of when they see this statistic and there's so many statistics that are thrown around the internet. I work a lot on social media. And so this is one that always pops up in the wellness space. For me, when I go back, over 20 years, and I'm going back to my college days and my training as a pharmacist, and you learn about all disease states, right? And no diss on pharmacy school or medical school or nursing school, but curriculum that is taught in those schools is often behind the times of kind of where we need to be. And I remember sitting in pharmacy school and particularly cancer, so learning about cancer, and it was presented in pharmacy school as a genetic disease. There were environmental factors listed on the PowerPoint, but nobody talked about that, right? It was just kind of, breast cancer and genes and that was kind of the focus. And so when I learned that statistic, which wasn't in pharmacy school, to your point, this comes later, I felt duped. I felt really angry because I was like, what? This is bananas. We are teaching these young healthcare professionals that this is a genetic disease when in fact it's not. And there are so many factors, and for those of your listeners that have experienced cancer themselves, there's a piece of cancer that you just cannot control, right? And so I come from a place where, and from your perspective, I like to control what I can control. Okay, so if I have the ability to control if I'm putting a product on my body and I can choose to buy something that has a carcinogen in it or not, of course I'm going to want to choose the one that's safer. But people can live a perfectly healthy life, do everything right, obsess over it, and cancer can still happen. I mean, I just want to put that out there because no one's to blame for getting a cancer diagnosis on the other end of the spectrum. I think right now, this environmental factor component of cancer is really important because as someone who's really tuned in to not only what's in your personal care products, but just in environmental toxins in general, there are some really not great changes happening in the way of these protections and our water and our food. It feels like the global picture of our environment, I don't see great things happening in the space right now, which to your point drives me even more so to want to control the things I can, within the walls of my own home.
I think it's so incredibly important. And I'll just share too with the listeners and with you. I was having a conversation with my husband who, again, both parents have cancer. And his assumption is just like, well, it is going to be what it is going to be. Like, that's just sort of my fate. And I shared this stat with him and he was like taken back. And I said, don't you realize this is why I'm so fired up about what snacks we're getting for our kids, what products we're using to clean our clothes and the house. So I'm a little obsessive about it, in particular, like the chemicals and the personal products. And it's not because I'm just being crazy. It's because that stat right there, the 90 to 95%, just giving our kids a fair chance, and ourselves too, by the way, because it's both on both sides of the family. But let's get into greenwashing, because this is so incredibly deceiving. And I think one of the things that shocked me when I was at the beginning of my journey is I started to pay attention to these personal care products and then learned how little regulation there actually is. And then I'm seeing these words: clean, natural, non-toxic. And I'm using products that I thought, in fact, were safe for me. And I later learned they weren't. Can we talk a little bit maybe about the regulation? That's a big part, why that's important, why it's different in the US than it is in other countries. And then also just talk about what to look out for the greenwashing.
Absolutely. When you said that you just in general get fired up about this issue, that for me is greenwashing. There is nothing that fires me up more than companies deceiving consumers. So we will get to why that is and what that is all about. From a regulatory perspective, I don't think the average American understands how unregulated the personal care, cosmetics, beauty space actually is. What I like to say to people, and just so that it sticks in their brain, I want you to think of this industry as the wild, wild west. So many, many moons ago, we're talking 1938, that was probably the most impactful legislation that was passed in our country regarding personal care products. So that was the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And this was the most huge first step in any kind of federal or lawful oversight. So think about, okay, the snake oil salesman that used to come to the door, false claims, all of that stuff. That is what really prompted this movement. And for the better part of 80 some odd years, that was the last significant regulation we saw in this space. So people can't assume that because something is on a shelf, it is safe. I want people to remember that. I want your listeners to come out of this podcast more skeptical consumers, because they should be. Recently, back in 22, there was an updated regulation called MOCRA, so the Modernization of the Cosmetics Regulation Act. And this was probably the biggest change we've seen in the last 100 years. Again, this is not a magic bullet, though. So this did a lot of great things in terms of fragrance allergen requirements for folks, adverse event reporting. MOCRA really wasn't this magical bullet, in my opinion, that everybody thought it was going to be. It did do some great things. So new requirements for fragrance allergens to be on labels, adverse events reporting, some changes for manufacturers, honestly, for registrations and what they needed to do. So it wasn't all for nothing. But to me, there's still so much work that still needs to be done. And when you think of the US, I think a lot of people stand behind this statement. Maybe, again, if you spend any time on the internet these days, everybody likes to talk about how great the EU is. EU standards. When someone says, our company follows EU standards, I want you to stop and realize that they are greenwashing you with that statement, because that statement does not translate to a product being safe. And so I always like to do a little math in this.
Yeah, like maybe their standards are slightly better, but that doesn't mean they're...
And they are, absolutely. And their standards are better. So most people might not realize that there's only 11 ingredients or 11 chemicals or whatever, molecules, compounds, 11 that are banned in the United States. When you go across the Atlantic Ocean, it's more in the 1,300 range, right? It's well over
11 versus 1,300.
Correct. Now, that's why people like to jump on this bandwagon of, oh my God, it's so much safer. It's essentially 1,000 times safer in the EU. Here's the thing. If you look at the number of compounds that exist in the world, it's probably somewhere in the 80 to 90,000. Probably more like 40,000 is what is actually being used in all these products. So when you do the fraction, when you do the math, and just to nerd out on you, I am a pharmacist, the percentage is still laughable. So in the United States, I mean, it's not even worth talking about. It's so unsafe. It's ridiculous. If you take the EU and someone's really jazzed about, oh, it's so safe. If you put that 1,300 over a 40,000 denominator, we're talking 3%, which means that 97% of that product isn't.
Yes, it's not safe.
Right. So I just want people to be wary of all of these claims.
This is like pouring gasoline over my passion right now, by the way, just because I was that consumer that just trusted, oh, it's on the shelf, so it's fine for me. And then, when I learned, I compared so many things to the EU because the standards were so much better. And I didn't realize you're comparing it. Ultimately, it is better compared to the US, but, in totality, there's still major issues.
Absolutely. And to me, this is where the service of this conversation really comes in, because the number of consumers in this country that don't even realize that there are harmful ingredients in the products they are using every day, that is literally why I'm here. Everybody needs to have this awareness. And again, make their own decisions. This is the spectrum. We'll get into kind of the no shame factor of this, but the reality of this industry, and when you put together beauty, personal care, cosmetics, I mean, we're talking trillions of dollars, okay?
Yeah.
And the industry leaders have been the ones always making the standards. If you look at the boards of all of these committees and, this association and this advisory committee, guess what? It's all the leaders of these big companies. If you look at 180 some odd beauty and personal care products companies in the US, majority of them are owned by 7 corporations. So you might think you're using this brand when really it's owned by someone else. So it all goes back to the industry is making the rules that benefit the industry. And not to mention, there are other industries in cahoots with the personal care and cosmetics industry. So if there's a waste from, say, the agriculture industry or some other industry, and we can have the cosmetics industry use this. They can take this byproduct from it's just
I've heard this. So like this happens in the essential oil world where a company might, have low grade, say lavender, and they're going to just sell it off. So it's mostly synthetic and they're going to sell it off to a perfume company to put into a perfume. And then you've got that synthetic fragrance that's now going into perfume that's being sprayed and covering my entire body. And they sell it. That's just the way they can make money. They're like, this is going to be wasteful. Instead of trashing it, I'm just going to sell it to this company who's going to then take it, put it in their product and make money off of it. And it's all natural. It's all natural because it's an essential oil. It's not just like everything. You can't take it for its face value. So that's like a perfect segue to talk about greenwashing, right? Because not only I think is it the words, it's also the visuals. I'm a marketer at heart. So anything that looks clean and pure and like green with flowers on it, it's like natural. It's not. So can you talk a little bit about greenwashing?
This for me is the thing. I said this earlier. It fires me up so much because what greenwashing is using words that don't carry any meaning or any regulatory value, using them to market to you, to get you to buy a product. And they are banking on the fact that you are just going to trust what they put on the front of the bottle. So I often tell people the ingredients are where we find if something, passes the sniff test. Does it walk the walk and talk the talk? So let's just review some of these terms. When a product says natural, when a product says mineral based, when a product says non-toxic, these words don't mean anything. They mean nothing. And so often what you will see is they know consumers want health and wellness. They know what parent, sister, mother, brother, friend wouldn't want to buy something safe for their loved ones. So they know that there's a desire for consumers to move in this direction, but they're not putting their money where their mouth is. It's still profits over people. We are not there yet. And I don't know. And this is where a lot of our conversation might evolve a little later. For that pendulum to swing, there's a way to go against like what these large corporations are doing. So be skeptical of the words on the front. A lot of times companies will like to put, words, know this or free of that. They do this on products that never even had those things in them in the first place. I was trying to think of an example. I was on a training sometime in the last 6 months, and we were talking about food because I'm a pharmacist. I really stick to kind of personal care products. So I'm not in the nutrition space. I don't really talk about food on my account, but they were talking about, in a similar kind of parallel, a food that was being marketed, and it said cholesterol free. There was never even cholesterol in this in the first place. It's just not even a thing. So these words that they put on the front of the bottle are really meant to get you to take it, read it, feel better, and move on and buy it, right? So that's essentially what greenwashing is. And these companies are banking on the fact that consumers are going to blindly trust that, green, that leaf, that, free of whatever, clear, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, think about detergents and it's like, well, no, this is free and clear, so it doesn't have chemicals in it. And I'm like, it does.
100%.
100% does. And I think we'll talk about ingredients and label reading, but the biggest thing that I learned, and maybe you can confirm for me, is the F word, like fragrance. If you see that in an ingredient, it's just a hard no for me now. It's a hard no, because for whatever reason, you can use the word fragrance and roll thousands of different chemicals under that category. So I used to just think fragrance is making it smell nice, when in fact it's actually just chemical synthetic smells, but it's more than just making that thing smell good. It's actually just toxic crap that they're rolling under that the F word.
It is. And we can't have a podcast about this issue without talking about fragrance. And, I'm happy to get into it briefly here because it's so, so important. So for people to understand, and I love this teaching of it because fragrance is something that's easy for people to remember. Because when I talk about some ingredients, not everybody's a chemist, not everybody's a pharmacist. Some people can't read these names. Some people don't even know the names of the medications they're taking, right? So I get it. People aren't into the chemical names. Most people can remember fragrance. And so if you just start there, and when you shop, you look at every product you buy, and I'm talking everything from lip balm to laundry detergent. If you look at the back and you see fragrance on that label, I want you to put it back on the shelf. And for me, just like you, it is a deal breaker. So what fragrance actually is, the term fragrance hides a mixture of chemicals that are in the product. And we're talking potentially harmful things. We're talking endocrine disruptors, allergens. Companies are not legally required to disclose what they are using to fragrance the product. Okay. So when I personally see the word fragrance, sure, I know that there's harmful ingredients in there, but I immediately am skeptical. I'm like, why is this company just not telling me what they're using? There's so many great ways to scent products. And that's the thing, living in this kind of avoiding toxins, wellness space, it doesn't mean you live a life of unscented things, right? There are amazing things in nature that smell really good that we can safely use. So this is really a regulatory loophole. Again, goes back to the industry and them doing what they want to do and not being regulated for it. And it allows brands to protect their formulas, right? So what am I using? I can't possibly have my competitor know what I'm using to scent this product, but it leaves the consumer uninformed, and potentially harmful ingredients are in that now. So phthalates are the biggest thing that is within fragrance. Again, when I see fragrance on a label and then I see phthalate free, marketing. Unless I call that manufacturer and they're willing to disclose to me everything they're using to fragrance that product, I'm out. But phthalates is really the endocrine disrupting factor linked to hormonal changes, reproductive issues, developmental issues. And I want you to think of phthalates, for simplistic terms, it's like a plastic. It's a plasticizer. It is actually what holds the fragrance. So when somebody washes their hair with a conventional shampoo, and then 3 or 4 days later, your hair still smells if you didn't since wash it, that's the phthalates holding the fragrance of that product. You do not want phthalates on your body, in your hair, etc.
And your skin's your biggest organ of your body, right? So if you just think about what you're putting on, soap, and what you're cleaning with, because your skin is absorbing all of those things, that I've never heard phthalates explained in that way. It's protecting the fragrance and then doing damage at the same time.
Absolutely. And if you think about, I mean, your scalp, your underarms, and your groin area, those are three of the most absorbent parts of your body when we talk about the skin. And you're right. That's another thing people forget in this. They put these products on, they use these products, and they don't realize that these ingredients, and again, this is not an exact science, so I'm not saying every single thing you put on your skin is absorbed. Not to oversimplify it, these ingredients get into your bloodstream. They are absorbed and they don't go through the normal filtration systems where if you ingest something, if you were to take something orally, there's something that happens. It goes through your GI tract and then it goes to your liver to kind of be processed before it even enters your systemic bloodstream. That is not true of what we use topically. When you use things topically that are absorbed into your skin, it goes directly into the bloodstream. What other people don't realize, to wrap up the fragrance piece, it's not just phthalates. And again, I want you to think of endocrine disruptors in that regards.
Can you explain endocrine disruptors? Because I think that is also a hot word, and some people might not fully understand exactly what that means and how important that is, especially, I mean, it is for boys and men too, but especially for women.
Absolutely. So we all have an endocrine system. It's part of the many systems in our bodies. The way the endocrine system works is really kind of a messenger system. And your endocrine system controls almost every function of your body, if you think about this. I mean, obviously people go to reproduction, but thyroid, metabolism, all of it. All of it.
It's all intertwined.
It's all intertwined. And it's a feedback loop. So it's your brain sending messages. And so if you think of these little messengers, it's almost like if you take your fist and then you take your hand, kind of like a little Pac-Man, and you fit them together, these things are communicating with each other. And normally your body's hormones is what is sitting in these receptors. Okay. When you use products that can disrupt that, those chemicals can sit in the place of where your hormones go. And so that can create, depending on what it is and what part of the endocrine system we're talking about, that can create tremendous issue. So when you think about infertility, you think about autoimmune diseases, Hashimoto's, you think of little girls getting their period crazy early. I mean,
that really fires me up.
Yeah.
Then people have estrogen dominance because, again, you're using these chemicals that are, I love that diagram, and your body thinks it's estrogen. And so it gets like super confused, and then you become estrogen dominant, and that then also causes all these health issues. All because I wanted my hair to smell great, or there's so many germs around coming out like in the fall with my kids. So I'm just going to bleach the crap out of everything and use Fabuloso and like all of those things that, I used to clean my shower. I'd have to open my windows, run a fan, and I would spray it clean and then have to run out because I feel like I was going to pass out. But I'd still continue to use it because I was like, oh, it leaves this nice after smell and it does a pretty good job. And I'm like, how, like, I get headaches from it. Like, those are all signs of massive amounts of toxicity in these cleaners.
Well, this is another aspect of the maybe not greenwashing, but the marketing is there are lots. And I think of cleaning and I think of laundry. These are categories of products where we have been conditioned to think they need to smell or smell a certain way. And so that's why we continue to buy these products, right? You can clean your house effectively to the point where you're not worried about germs without getting a headache. Like there are things that exist, right?
I know I've been using a natural I'm using the word natural, but I've been using a cleaner for 7 years and my house is clean. I can vouch for that. And it smells like clove and cinnamon, but it doesn't smell like, Mr. Clean. Was that the guy that the Pine Sol?
Endocrine disruptors are just they're just one of the aspects that can be hidden within fragrance. There's more, I mean, neurotoxins, carcinogens, asthma triggers, allergens, things of that nature too. So for me, and it sounds like for you as well, fragrance is a deal breaker. It screams mistrust.
And it's hard, by the way. It is hard. Like when you start looking at things, you're going to be like, why is fragrance in this? And then it's nope, I'm just going to put it down. So my choices of personal care products and cleaning products like went from astronomical down to really just a small group of products that I would use. And we'll put links in the resources of products that we both love and recommend that we've been using for years. Let's maybe get into the ingredients and the label reading. So I know you have this concept of being practical and a no shame approach, which I absolutely love because oftentimes people want to start this non-toxic, like low tox lifestyle, but it's so overwhelming that they don't start. So I love the concept of not feeling shame around wherever you are in the journey. So what would your advice be to people? How do you start? And then how do you read labels and what are the ingredients to?
This is such a great question because the number one thing I hear over and over again is that when people have this wake up call, when they start kind of going down that rabbit hole for the first time, they immediately feel overwhelmed because everyone thinks they're using safe things until they know better, right? And that's by design of the marketing. So I like to remind people, number one, this is not about being perfect, and this is not an overnight situation. I always say this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. It's not about how fast you go or how quickly you can do it. It literally is, not to sound corny, it is a low tox journey. It's a path. It's something that you evolve with, not only for what you particularly use in your family, but also your budget. Because I want to be honest with you, products that are truly safe sometimes are going to cost more than the unregulated garbage that you're going to be able to buy at the local pharmacy or at the local grocery store. Like that just is what it is. And knowing that, I saw this great quote the other day where it's like, you can spend money on wellness or you can wait and spend money on illness. When you start thinking in that regard, it's worth it to make these swaps. And so you make them over time. For me, telling people what are the things that you're truly using every day. Again, when we talk about statistics,
that's where you should start, is what you're suggesting.
The things you're using every day matter so much more than the things you do every once in a while. So don't beat yourself up for the thing that you know is not good for you that you're using once or twice a year. The biggest impact you can have is on the things you're using on your body every single day, because that repeated exposure is really the impact that you're going to have. Think about your deodorant, your toothpaste, your shampoo, your hair care, your soaps,
hand soap,
just your hand soap. Yeah. And then, from there, what you're putting on your body, I really think kind of the next layer of that, and again, none of this stuff happens overnight, is really the cleaning and the laundry, to your point. And then when you can kind of go through that path and do it at your own pace. Maybe you're someone that's like, I can make one swap a month.
That is actually how I did it at the beginning. I've been in this journey like 8 years. I am still switching things out of my house.
You can throw things out and start over if you feel that passionate, but you don't have to. And you can go back to a lot. I mean, I remember somebody told me once they found out about the products they were using, they went back to CVS and they returned like $250 worth of products. And they could, because that was their return policy. And they were like, I'm done.
Oh, wow.
But do it at the pace that feels right to you, because there's no perfect path. We're all going to have different lines in the sand that we draw for what we're willing to part with, what we're not. I mean, I can talk with someone who's the most passionate person about non-toxic products, and they're like, you know what? I'm going to color my hair. There really isn't a great, safe, non-toxic option for hair dye. There's like one company I can think of out there that does good things, but
yeah, and then maybe that's your journey and your choice. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, don't beat yourself up about those things. Everybody has different priorities, but I truly think the biggest impact you can have is by making those small changes, because amongst the statistics we've talked about seeing on the internet, one that you've probably seen a million times is, as women, we are exposed to well over 100, if not like 168 or 178 chemicals a day before we even leave the house in the morning. Because you think about your toothpaste, your shampoo, your face wash, the cream you put on. All of these products have somewhere, and again, depending on what they are, somewhere between 12 and 20 ingredients. So it doesn't take long to add up.
And it's the compounding effect of using all these products, right? Is that soap so harmful? Well, maybe it's not, or maybe it is, but then I'm using it 4 to 10 times a day, times a week, times a month, times a year, times my lifetime.
Yeah.
And that is accumulating in my body. And if I'm not fully well, my liver's not functioning correctly, then it's staying in my body. And that's where things and disease can start to build, right? It can knock your immune system down. So sometimes because I've heard that argument, like, is it that bad? Just like it's totally fine. We're just going to use it this one time. And the answer is no, it isn't. But it's that compounding effect. And I would challenge all listeners, because I did this at the beginning, is to count how many products you're using in your morning routine. I'm not a big makeup wearer. I don't do a lot of, I just never did. And I used like 15 products. I was shocked. I had no idea how many things I was actually using. And now I think about, this is what gets me really fired up about the industry targeting young girls, is now they feel like they need to put on the wrinkle cream, the set spray, the foundation, the lip gloss, the lip liner. Like, I mean, talk about 15 products. They're probably doing 20. I mean, I saw like a video of a girl on YouTube who's 10, and she uses more products than I've ever used in my life, because they think that's necessary and they think it's cool because that's how they're getting marketed to. And so I'm coming into a stage in my daughter's life where she's asking lots of questions like, I want this and I want that. And I'm trying to explain to her why those things aren't allowed in our household.
It's maddening. I can't even.
Yeah, so mad.
I mean, I have daughters and I have been living this reality and, amongst their friends and what's happening. And the marketing to this generation of young women is so disgusting and unnecessary.
Yeah.
And we are going to see the implications of it later. And it literally breaks my heart because they don't need it, first of all. And not only do they not need it, but they are getting exposed to so many things that their bodies do not need. It's awful. The thing I also like to bring up in terms of practicality and approaching your own personal routine, because a lot of times when people have this like, well, like, am I really willing to spend, just that little more on the safe product? And we talked about this kind of wellness versus illness investment. I have found in my own Low-Tox journey, similar story. I am not a big makeup person. Maybe I put on a little makeup when I go on a date with my husband, but day to day, zero makeup, right? I find that when you start learning more and more, the products that you actually buy, the quantity goes down. So you end up buying more quality products that may be apples to apples. You're like, okay, maybe I'm spending more on this laundry detergent than I did 5 years ago. However, when I look at the number of products I'm actually buying total, it's significantly down. The number of products I wouldn't even dream about buying. And for me, again, no judgment. This is just me personally. Nail polish is not a priority for me. It just isn't. So that's something I don't use in my life. But say I did, and I kind of did some research and I looked into gel manicures and what that does and what it's all about. That would be about a $60 expense, I would guess, roughly, every 2 or 3 weeks. You do that math, that's $1,500 a year that you're spending on that. And again, if that brings you the supreme happiness in the world, that's fine, right? I'm not here to judge that. But if I'm someone who's kind of deciding, okay, I'm going on this Low-Tox path, is like, is this important to me? Is this not? I would much rather take that $1,500, and I probably don't need to spend all of it, but I can spend some of it in higher quality products that will give me peace of mind that I'm not worried about all of these things that we've talked about in terms of the health impact and things that are going to come later. Because to your point, and I know you said this really early in the podcast, this isn't really sexy, this topic, okay? So when you see things on the internet and you see wellness, and Americans like easy, right? This is going to help me lose weight, or this is going to magically take off those extra 5 pounds that I've been trying to lose. Switching from a deodorant that could harm your health to one that won't you're not going to notice that data. I mean, you're going to maybe feel better about yourself and your decision, but it's not like you're going to look in the mirror and feel like this magically different person. That's not sexy and flashy and hypey, but this is such an important issue. I just want people to pretend that it's sexy. It's a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
And these small steps are super important.
So can we talk about the easy button? You had mentioned to me when we were preparing for this call that you have a set list of 30 ingredients, I guess are red flags. If they're in your products, you probably want to think, about changing them. Can you maybe just name a few of the chemicals on there, and then we'll make sure to make that list available to the listeners as well?
I mean, I spend most of my time on Instagram, and on that platform, the thing I always come back to is just helping consumers understand ingredients and sharing ingredient awareness.
You do a really good job at that, by the way.
Oh, thank you. There's a lot of people on the internet doing that, right? And so I truly believe, and although I am a pharmacist, I don't believe that you need to have an advanced degree to be able to do right by your family and make these decisions. So I wanted to make a list of 30 ingredients to avoid. These are ingredients that if they were in a product, no way, not buying it. So consumers can take that list, because I truly believe if you have some awareness, if you can spot, read it, review it, and you'll listen to this podcast and there'll be buzzwords and things that you remember, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to be had just by avoiding things that are bad for us, right? And having that kind of resource that you can go back to. And I'm just giving it away for free because I don't believe that you need this massive courses. And again, if somebody really wants the knowledge, like that exists for somebody, but the average consumer just wants
it to be easy.
And they don't want to be lied to. So if you familiarize yourself with this list, to me, it's a tool that will allow people to decipher, okay, this is actually a clean company, because there are many companies out there doing great things. You have to stay on top of it. You have to be careful because companies get bought, they get sold.
Yeah, I was going to say, check and recheck.
Yep. Like Native is a perfect example of a company that was doing great things. Then they were sold to Procter & Gamble and the ingredients changed. And now they are not a company that I would even remotely recommend to people. By having a guide, by having a simple list of ingredients, I think that will help people spot the greenwashing.
You could print this list out, fold it, and put it in your wallet.
Yeah, you can have it on your phone. I mean, it will help folks, I think, make better decisions for their families.
Honestly, you could take a picture, put that picture in ChatGPT of the list, scan a label and say, are any of these chemicals in here? And it would tell you yes or no. I mean, ChatGPT does so many things, but that's, to me, is incredibly easy, because sometimes you're reading them and sometimes I'm looking and I'm like, I'm out. Like, this list is so long. And oftentimes the ingredients that are labeled first, the concentration is higher. That's what I've been told. I don't know if that's true. But okay, so we'll post that 30 ingredient list for people to access. And then what if I just tell me what to buy? We'll also put a list of those resources as well, and in recommended personal care products and cleaners and so forth. I don't know if you want to mention a couple of the chemicals.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So
maybe the top 5.
Fragrance is always number 1. Fragrance is always the takeaway that people will actually remember. We talked a lot in the beginning of this conversation about cancer. And so for me, ingredients that have the potential to have carcinogenic contaminants or be carcinogenic, those to me are the most important to avoid. So let's define carcinogenic. So if something is carcinogenic, it means that it has the potential to play a role in causing cancer. There are ingredients in the products we use every day, they're all over the shelf, that in the manufacturing of those ingredients, carcinogenic contaminants could be present in those ingredients in that product. So these are called ethoxylated ingredients. This is a class of compounds that I like to talk to people about the most because it's one of the easier ones to find. I think, before I get into ethoxylated, let's throw out parabens. That's one I think a lot of people know. You should avoid parabens in your products. Ethoxylated ingredients, it's basically taking a compound and it reacts with something called ethylene oxide. And by doing that, now that compound is ethoxylated. And many times when that happens, the new compound that's made is going to end in the letters ETH, F, just like ethoxylated. So if you're looking on the back of a product and you see a word that ends in ETH, it's ethoxylated, which is now, by looking at that product, I'm like, oh, I'm now going to buy something that has carcinogenic contaminants in it. No, I'm not. I'm definitely not buying that. That's a hard pass.
Yeah.
The thing that is a little tricky, so I like bringing up ethoxylated ingredients because they're easy to spot with the F at the end of the word. Not all ethoxylated ingredients end in ETH. So there are some that I like to make people aware of. Phenoxyethanol is one of those that I think differentiates the truly clean companies from the ones that are posing as clean companies. So you'll see that on the ingredient label, phenoxyethanol. It's a preservative. When parabens started getting a lot of notoriety, companies started switching to phenoxyethanol.
Yeah, because no one's anoxylate.
Yeah, no one's looking for that.
Yeah.
But the words that end in F, pretty easy to find, pretty easy to see, because you don't need to say the word, just like look at the end of the word and does it end in ETH? Yeah, so I like to pass that one along. And also tags, like if you see capital letters, PEG, if you see PPG, if you see glycols, if you kind of clump all of those together, those are petroleum derived ingredients and products. And again, there's carcinogenic issues with, again, I could get all sciencey and organic chemistry, which most people aren't here to listen to, but polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, you don't want those in your products. So those are ones I also say to avoid. But I think if you walk away and you're like, okay, no fragrance and no ethoxylated ingredients, so no ETH, you would be amazed at how many products you'll be putting back on the shelf.
Is there any brands? I don't know if you want to share this, but are there any brands you recommend?
So I am super discerning when it comes to buying products, as you can imagine. I kind of went on this hunt of like, when my mom got diagnosed, like, what am I going to buy her? What am I going to get her? Obviously, we need to clean up what she's using. The smaller companies that you're going to find out there that are still independent, they're still doing their own thing. They don't have, they're not owned by Procter & Gamble. The companies that are committed to making clean products are the ones that I will consume and partner with, right? I don't have a million brand partnerships. I'm very particular. If I'm going to represent a brand or share a brand with my following, for me, it's about being authentic to, I actually am using this. I want you to see what I'm using. So whether it's the coffee I'm drinking or the skincare I'm using. So one of the companies that I work with probably the most out of all the companies is, and these are unique attributes I want you to guys, your listeners to think about when they look at companies. So it is a small batch manufacturer in Rhode Island. It's called Pure Haven. And I know Diana will put information about what their offering is in the notes. But what I just said there was a small batch manufacturer. I don't think people realize how few companies actually manufacture their own products. And when you manufacture your own products, you're in control of the formulating and the preparation, and it's happening under your oversight. That's not the case when you outsource. When you look at the back of a bottle and it says distributed by, someone else is manufacturing that own product. And so sure, you might have an agreement, you might have contracts into what is being made, but you are not there as the company.
Yeah, you don't have full oversight.
The full oversight is not there.
Yeah.
So I love that about Pure Haven. To me, there is nothing more important than the ingredient integrity and the formulation of how it's being made. And so you're going to see that with other small companies that exist. They're making their own products, right? There's a sauna company that I love. They handcraft their own products right in Missouri.
I saw that post and I was like, maybe I need a little sauna.
These are the types of things that you want to pay attention to. It can be overwhelming. So if people feel overwhelmed and they're like, I don't want your 30 toxins to avoid Amy. Tell me where to shop. I want people to feel comfortable knowing that they can go to look at Pure Haven's offering. And this is, again, these are things you need in your routine. This is all things personal care. It's your deodorant, toothpaste, hair care, baby stuff, all the things. And you can shop with peace of mind and not have to obsess over the ingredients because that is being done for you. So it's actually kind of ironic that I do all this talking about ingredients and about ingredient awareness, because what I keep finding is the average consumer is like, I just want the easy button.
Yeah, tell me what to buy.
I just want to be able to trust. And for as long as, Pure Haven continues to do what they do with their formulations, and the oversight stays the same, like I'm in. And for me, it will always come down to the ingredients. So that's something I like recommending just because it is one-stop shopping. And so people often too will want to know, well, what can I get locally? I'll tell you, there is so little that I buy that I use every day that I actually get locally. And I'm not only just talking about my deodorant and my personal care. The coffee I drink is not, I get from the internet. I get from a very particular company. The tea that I drink, these things that you do, I think you will find, sure, if I'm on vacation or I need to go to the store, can I get something? Of course. But my day-to-day is not.
Yeah, well, because you've done your research and you're sourcing it from the companies that you trust. And
Right.
oftentimes it is those smaller companies that have the full control. So we've covered so much today, from greenwashing and confusing labels to practical swaps and daily habits. I think that's great advice to start small, work, and focus on the things that you use the most. But I think what really shines through is how approachable this can be when we take it step by step, like you talked about. And that's what I love about your work, Amy. I've been following you for years, and so it's really an honor to be able to talk to you and share what you're doing for so many people with my listeners as well. And I think you take something that feels so incredibly overwhelming and you really turn it into something digestible, and you're empowering all of those people, that you're speaking to on a daily basis. I'd love to, hear your thoughts. Like, what is your biggest hope coming out of today's conversation? And for those who are listening that maybe are going to be starting their Low-Tox journey.
My hope is that, well, first of all, that people show themselves some grace, because once you start knowing this stuff, it's pretty easy to be hard on yourself. And if I can offer any perspective there, I've got preteen and teenage children. And when they were babies, I was not on this journey. So I cringe to think about what I used on my most precious things in my life, but I didn't know then. And it's okay, because once you can make the changes and have an impact, and something I didn't even mention in our talk is this is not hocus pocus. I'm a science person. This is well studied. Like, there have been studies where women have stopped using personal care products with some of these harmful ingredients we've talked about. And within the course of 4 weeks, breast cancer expression genes have changed and gone down. Like, this is real. This is like real life. So I want your listeners to take a deep breath, to maybe make a list of what they want to change and come up with a plan of what feels right to you. Do you want to wait for that shampoo to run out and then swap? Great. Are you so concerned and freaked out that you're ready to make a swap today? Great. Just follow what feels right, because the low-tox space, the non-tox space, especially on the internet, can be super judgy and super toxic. Ironically, the word comes up there. And this is an individualized path. And just be kind to yourself, make those small changes, because those small changes ultimately will have a big impact. And I want them to just be more skeptical consumers. I think people just assuming that something's on the shelf, meaning that it's safe, it's just not true. And so if people kind of start there, I think they're many steps ahead of the game.
I love that reminder that this isn't about perfection. It's just about small, approachable steps that can give us confidence and control over what we bring into our homes. And it's just one step at a time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you, Amy, so much. For everyone listening, I want you to carry Amy's encouragement with you. Start with just that one swap, one label read, one ingredient. Print out that list, fold it in your wallet if you want to dig in like that, and choose the one thing you want to avoid just to start. Because the truth is, your daily routine does matter, and those little changes add up to big protection for your health and for your family's well-being. So if today's conversation resonated, I encourage you to connect with Amy and learn more about her work, where she helps women and families cut through the greenwashing, understanding the ingredients, and creating their own low-tox easy button. Amy, we didn't cover, how can people follow you?
I spend most of my time on Instagram. I am trying to diversify that, but in terms of real life connection, that's mostly where I hang out. They can also find me at lowtoxpharmacist.com. There's all kinds of things.
And what's your handle on Instagram?
Yeah, it's Low-Tox Pharmacist.
Okay.
So
Low-Tox Pharmacist.
Low-Tox Pharmacist. That's where I'll be hanging out.
Listeners, thank you for joining us today on Women's Wellness Authority. If this conversation spoke to you, share it with a friend who might need the encouragement. And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, I would really appreciate a 5-star review because it means the world and it helps more women find us. So until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and most of all, stay well. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Women's Wellness Authority. If today's conversation inspired you, shifted your perspective, or sparked something within you, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who might need it the most. Have a story of your own or something you'd like to share? I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Women's Wellness Authority. Please note the content shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider regarding your health and wellness decisions. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and most of all, stay well. Thanks, everyone.